Brakathiya Howell, Brakathiya Awashai, Brakathiya Howell, Brakathiya Awashai, Brakathiya Howell, Brakathiya Howell, Bashim Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of great most knowing you well. I'm going to say salutations to the hopeful elect out there, man. You Akim to Sadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. I'm the priest Shaman, and this one is going to be entitled More Crack. Sorry, I mean Stimulus. Or more crack cocaine, something like that. Nothing's really the same thing which has happened. So most of us just got that government stimulus, whether the minimum being 1,200, 600, or whatever based on how much you file for 2018. If you meet the requirements, you got something, right? And I've been, to the spirit, been saying this for a minute now. You know, this whole, once Donald Trump passed that got that $2 trillion infrastructure bill, which I did a lesson on. Whatever respective channel this video is being watched upon, you could find that video on the Donald Trump plan is not only strategic, but also prophetic. And another lesson called Donald Trump $2 trillion infrastructure bill. So things are moving according to prophecy. Let me go ahead and read this. Isaiah 10:1. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and write grievousness which they have prescribed. Most Israelites, when they got that money in their account, our people are so short-minded. They're so short-minded. At least the Jake around my job, niggas is already doing the money dance, and they already forgot about the lockdown. And I knew this would happen, man. Our fucking people are, let me slack it. Calm down. Just like in 2001, when fear and terror fell upon them, 3 years later, they was making movies like Soul Plane. That's Jake. Short-term, sottish, stupid. Anyways, the majority of Jake got that little $1,200 crack cocaine, and they were dancing, rejoicing, thinking their woes and problems are put away. And when you watch those previous lessons I did, I said, look, I explained deficit spending. That deficit spending is the government pumping money into an economy. So this $1,200 that you got was at zero cost to you. If we're 2021, it's not going to be in your taxes. Picture it, it's a refundable tax credit. So the best way I could compare that to is like the government just gave you a kid. If you had a kid, that's pretty much the same thing. You just got a check for $1,200 at no cost to you. And what does that do? That boosts an economy. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see an economic boom, just like what Ronald Reagan did with deficit spending. They just copying what Ronald Reagan did in the 80s. Reaganomics, right? He did the governments, he did the deficit spending, pumping money in the economy. Stock markets went to a all-time high. Economy went to an all-time high. George Bush copied this. Clinton copied this. They all do it prior to election. Now, why is that? Why is that great for prophecy? Because how does it end? How did Ronald Reagan's term end? With the nation $200 trillion in debt. That's how it ended. With one of the largest stock market crashes in history, that's how it ends. You build up a bigger bubble, it creates a larger pop. When a drug fiend is jonesing, and he scratches his neck, he's, oh man, I need me a line, man. How do you fix him? You take him off the drugs, you put him in rehab. How do you fuck him up more? You give him another line of cocaine, another line of crack. And the greater the hit, the greater the high, and then even the greater the crash. And that's what's going to happen here in America. Right? So it says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, that write grievousness which they have prescribed. The so-called white man has never have any intentions of helping you. That's not his motives. His motives is to enslave you. He's a devil. He's a deceiver. Let me get this book right here in the book of Isaiah, the 31st chapter. Isaiah 31:1. Woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, and stay on horses, and trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong, but they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. Now, I'm going to explain this again. Where did they get the money from? Where did the government get their money from? How do governments fund deficit spending? They fund deficit spending from personal loans and small business loans. What will fuel somebody to take out a personal loan or a small business loan if they're greatly in debt? What has created this debt? This artificial lockdown. This artificial food shortage. It's not a real food shortage. The government is telling you limit yourself to only buy 2 gallons of milk, while you have farmers emptying out so much gallons of milk because you shorten it. It's not a natural food shortage. They're doing the same thing they did in 2008, where they took away 28 trillion. The rich took away 28 trillion from the have-nots and the middle class and pocketed the money. They're doing the same thing now again. It's the same shit. They do the same shit over and over. They use crises to further their agenda and enforce higher degrees of the Patriot Act. Wealth consolidation. Try to find means to introduce the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip. This is what they do over and over again, and people are short-minded, quickly forget things. Governor Cuomo, or Governor Homo, is holding down New York closed, right? Because he wants $500 billion. It's not about a virus. This virus thing, look, pull the veil away from the wizard and you'll see that death is down by 12%. You'll see that in 2017, 81,000 people died of the flu. This year, it's at 51,000. Pull the smoke away and see the wizard that's pulling these strings. So our people are going down to Egypt for help, as usual, going to the so-called white man. A lot of people are going to borrow. Scriptures tell us that the borrower is servant to the lender, putting themselves more in debt. And this is what's funding this deficit spending. The goal is now to pump it back into the economy. And why do I say it's going to be a greater boom than Ronald Reagan, but a greater bust than Ronald Reagan's era, and a lot more faster? The introduction of social media. We're living in we're already cashless, man. We're living in a digital era where things move way more progressively. Habakkuk 2:6. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his? That is the so-called white man. He takes gains from the world, from the entire planet. Taking lands, taking people, taking nationalities. Just a complete virus. He comes in the particular host, destroy it, and then spread more viruses. How long, and to him that ladeth himself with thick clay? This is a debt-based society. The paper money that they're trading with is they're selling debt. Now the feds are manipulating inflation rate. They're manipulating currencies. They're manipulating interest rates. They're manipulating inflation. If everything was accounted for right now, your minimum wage should not be $15 an hour. It should be $50 an hour if it was adjusted for inflation. All this money that they're going to pump into the economy, what it does is it forces you to want to go out and buy. If you know that price around you is going up, you want to spend your money a lot faster. You don't want to keep it. What they wanted to avoid was deflation, which is where things are going down and people are holding their money because prices are going to go down. So when they passed this $1 trillion, I was man, make it 100 trillion. The more money, the quicker the rise and boom. The quicker the rise, the greater the boom. Giving more heroin to an addict is what's happening. You're going to have even a 1% within the 1% get even richer. Because why? They're not allowing companies to fail, man. That's what bailouts do. If you're walking ATM for everybody, that only creates one thing: irresponsibility. That's all that's going to generate. If you have somebody that you could always go to for money, it just generates irresponsibility. And that's what these companies have become. That's what they're going to continue being. All right. And that's why they're going to keep having greater and greater crashes. But these crashes will not last forever. There is a point where you have to get rid of this dollar. And I'm going to get into that part as well. Deuteronomy 24:6. No man shall take the nether or the upper millstone to pledge. For he taketh a man's life to pledge. The upper and nether millstone in the ancient time was something you used to grind mill. You know, your basic, the millstone, you grind the mill to, make bread and these types of stuff so you could eat, your livelihood. What is the modern day version of that? What's a man's livelihood today? A man's livelihood might be his house. It might be his business. It might be his family. And what is this man has done? He's taken that to pledge. Because a lot of people in the United States, after this lockdown, not just here, but globally, the rich has put your livelihood to pledge. Because you're going to take out a loan that you can't pay back to keep your livelihood. This is how they get you. Now, who benefits during this particular crisis? The ones that were not affected by this crisis. If you were working, if you were making money through this crisis, if you were profiting through this crisis, then it did not affect you in any way, shape, or form. But if you did not, more than likely you'll be taking out a loan. More than likely this tax credit is not going to help you. Because guess what? A majority of Americans that get this money is going to right back into the banks in the form of a credit that you owe, debt that you owe, all right? Or just to buy what you can with this artificially created shortage. As you see above that picture from this TV show South Park, and it's gone. He pretty much gave this banker his money, and in 2 seconds it was gone. That's what's happening with this shit right here. And Jake, with their short-mindedness, is already dancing, rejoicing, thinking about going back to the club, thinking about doing this, that, and the third. And that's how it is, man. That's how Jake is. That's how Americans are. Short-minded idiots, man, for the most part. Let's go on to another one. Job 24:9. They pluck the fatherless from the breast and take a pledge of the poor. So there goes that pledge again. In the Hebrew, chabal, and we have a deal. Deal corruptly. You know? A band. A pledge. In other words, a loan. All right? They make a deal, a corrupt deal with the poor, the have-nots. Here it is, they done created this artificial lockdown. What generated the lockdown? Well, that number that was propagated. 224,000 people will die of the coronavirus. Without that number, they couldn't initiate the lockdown. They were able to initiate the lockdown in certain states. Some states take it more serious than others. Here in New York, they're taking it super serious. Places like Florida, they're not giving a fuck. Places like South Carolina, they're not giving a fuck. Certain places are not doing social distancing, and their death rate is going down a lot faster than places are. So people are waking up to this. That's how certain places like Ohio, you have people revolting because they're pissed off. You told us something and you did not, and that did not happen. And yet you keeping me in my house. So fuck you. That's the mindset of certain Americans. It can lead to a revolt. It can lead to more uproars. Either way this thing turns out, there's no getting out of prophecy. There's no getting out of the destruction of America. And I also want to say this as well about the dollar. All right, because one might say, as they say, this thing's a far off. No, it's not a far off. It's not a far off. Because what? You don't have to shut down your whole economy to collapse a dollar. When the train system today, people that are born, I don't know when they collapsed it, but they used to use tokens for the trains. Did they collapse the entire train system to introduce the MetroCard? They did not. The Omni system. They're getting rid of MetroCards to introduce the Omni system. Gradualism. The digital dollar. Right now, the U.S. government wants to say, look, no more paper currency. What can you do about it? What can the American people do about it? Nothing. Because you're already cashless anyways. Most companies or most stores would say that. No longer taking cash. We only take credit. And the reason the government wants to create a cashless society is because they want to use something called blockchain technology where they could trace every single transaction you do. Because this man's a devil. He wants to own you. He wants to be just like the Most High. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Let's read it. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called the Most High. And that goes into many different aspects, all right? Because how does he exalt himself and be like the Most High? He has images painted up as himself, all right, of the Heavenly Father and the Son looking like so-called white people, which are Edomites according to the Bible. He also has surveillance watching you 24/7, Just like how the Most High has the angels watching everyone 24/7. This man is trying to be like that. He wants to know your thoughts, your patterns. He's tracking your car. He know where you just went, this store, that store. He wants to predict your plans as well. Okay. He wants to be like the Heavenly Father, but he will not be like the Heavenly Father. Okay. So every single agenda that he moves, he's trying to be more and more like a God. That's his ultimate end goal. All right, that's his enlightened utopia, his new world order, where he's controlling everything, and the rest of the masses are chip programmed and being perfect batteries, like they show you in the Matrix, for this system. It says, "Who opposeth and exalteth himself all above all that is called the Most High, or that is worshipped, so that he, as the Most High, sitteth in the temple of the Most High, showing himself that he is the Most High." So everything the so-called white man does, these global elitists do, is to further totalitarianism. They have something called the Georgia Guidestones, and they have something called the Enlightened Utopia. The goal of the Georgia Guidestone is to what? Reduce the population to 500 million or billion. It's either one of those. Oh, sorry, it can't be billion. I'm sorry, 500 million. The quickest way to do that is with a Third World War. And there's pictures of Evelyn Rothschild pushing Prince Charles to invoke a war with the Middle East. The only reason that has not happened yet, because it will happen, a third war, as the scriptures speak about, is because this RFID microchip has to take place. This thing has to become more mandatory. A digital currency has to become mandatory. And all it will take, if you have a digital currency, is a cyber crisis. That's all it would take. Not saying it's going to be that, but that you can't rule out any type of crisis. Cyber crisis from China. We need to know exactly where you're at. We need to know every transaction. Our system is compromised. Here's this chip. They could use the vaccination. They could use another. Look, the thing with the virus now, the virus is the new terrorist. Zika, Ebola, H1N1, COVID-19 is no different from Saddam, Bakr al-Baghdadi, Osama bin Laden. It's just a face for an agenda. It's just a catalyst for the next agenda, and you could always resurge them. What about next season? What are we gonna do? Lock down the system? If there is a next season, what do you do? Lock down the system again? You could create a virus at any time. You could create a false pandemic at any time, and they have that in their back pocket now. Let's go to the next scripture. Job 22:6. For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for naught, and stripped the naked of their clothing. So the so-called white man, which is our brother, we're closer to the so-called white man than the so-called African, because that goes back to Genesis, the 25th chapter, Jacob and Esau. This is about, Jacob and Esau. By the way, the only reason this US dollar has not collapsed is because it is the world reserve currency still. And these other nations' currency are way weaker. Prime example, Russia's currency, the ruble, is down 30%. That's how come Russia can no longer buy gold. Everybody hates America, but they're flocking to the US dollar. Why is that? Let's go to Revelations, the 18th chapter. Let's go to Revelations, the 18th chapter, because all this is prophetic. All this is prophetic. Revelations 18:1. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having a great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried with a mighty, strong voice, saying, hold on, Salakia. Right. He cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils. So that's the destruction of America in the Third World War. And when it says become the habitation of devils, it means these desert-like creatures are going to inhabit this land. No more people. This is going to be an example of what not to do. And the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through her abundance of her delicacies. So that verse right there is why America, when this place goes the fuck down, these nations are going to be well, because this is their main engine of profit, is America. So even though hyperinflation will happen here in America, when this place gets destroyed, America is not going to turn to Zimbabwe, if you will, permanently. Because when this place is destroyed, these nations, in the midst of the destruction, these nations are still going to be making money off this bitch leading up to the Third World War. So America is not going to fall from the number one largest superpower into a third world nation in Africa overnight. It's not going to happen. You know? Because when this shit gets destroyed, and it will, and it's going to, the beautiful part about it is, you know, I just mentioned the short-mindedness of people. That's why they're going to be eating and drinking when this thing happens. Right now, people are on edge. But they could quickly forget things, man. They always do. They forget every fucking thing, man. History, they just sweep away history and they just live right in the moment of now. They're only on edge for now. You could keep them on edges, you know, as long as the Most High deems fit for the so-called white man to do this. But they have short-term memory. The moment, if they open up the club tomorrow, they're going to go right in the club tomorrow and blow their money, put themselves right in debt, and forget their former state that, look, man, I was almost out of a job for fucking, you know what I'm saying? That's how the American people operate. So it says, and the merchants of the earth are wax wish to her the abundancies of her delicacy. All right? So they still got to get some more money out this whore, and they will, okay? And when that destructions happen, when the Most High puts that evil thought in the king of Russia and kicks off this battle, then that's it, man. And this thing is going to escalate a lot quicker than people think, man. It's not that hard to introduce a digital currency, man. Right now, when I go up to the gas station, a prime example is credit cards, man. At one time, you had to swipe your card. They do away with that. Now you have to put your chip in the card. They do away with that. Now when I go up to the gas station, I just tap my card against a wire. You see how they do it? Gradually. They don't have to shut down a whole credit card or shut down. They just gradually change it. Ease you into it. Make you numb to it. You know? Another crisis, another crash. This digital system is not working. There's not much dollars. We're going to collect in your dollars. And we're going to go now with this digital dollar. Easy. Boom. So the more money they pump into this economy, overall, the better for prophecy, man. Because they're going to have a short-term high of cocaine in this society. And as every single time they do it, it ends even in a bigger crash. It never fails, man. History always repeats itself. This is the outcome of what happens when you do deficit spending. You get a short-term burst, a short-term high, just like hitting a line. And the more drugs you fill yourself up with, the harder your crash. A lot of these guys like Peter Schiff, Gerald Celente, you know, they telling people, look, you know, let these businesses fail and, you know, let's eat it. And pretty much they're saying, don't take another hit of snort of cocaine. Let's go into rehab. Fuck that. No. Pump more money into this bitch. Pump more cocaine into this bitch. That way this shit could collapse a lot faster, man. Lord willing. So with that, look, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which you well. And salutations to the hopeful elect out there. You Akim to Sadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.